Hi, everyone. Today, what we're going to do is begin our first discussion of many about the final paper. I want to kind of work with you in terms of how you organize your paper, how you go about kind of filling in the introduction, the body, and the conclusion, and then kind of, work with you in terms of doing any type of revision after you turn it in as well. So again, this kind of connects to the W part of our class. I want to make sure that we take advantage of this final paper, not only to apply symbolic interactionism to your social issue of choice, but also to kind of recognize writing as a process, something that if you really start to break it down, you can be a better writer as a result. So starting this third and final part of the class, what I really do is kind of think about the final paper as kind of utilizing all the assignment skills that you've been building throughout the semester, kind of knowing the perspective, learning the perspective in the first part, and then performing an analysis, applying the concepts to current affairs, what you've been doing in the second part of the class. So in part three, I see kind of the totality of what we've been doing so far. You take that knowledge, symbolic interactionism, use your critical analysis skills, and then also kind of apply the concepts to life today. So basically, what the final paper will look like in terms of organization. You have the introduction, you have the body, and you have the conclusion. And then within each spot, you're going to kind of have kind of sub-organization within the overall organization of the paper. So overall, we can look at basically the major goals of each part of the paper and kind of the questions that underline the parts of the paper as well. So beginning with the introduction, basically you want to do three main things here. First, you want to introduce the reader to symbolic interactionism. And then you want to talk about your social issue you're going to be looking at through symbolic interactionism. And then basically you're going to talk about the goal or perhaps the goals of your paper. So that's how you can really kind of break down the intro, what should be inside that introduction section of your paper. And kind of within each part, the kind of sub-organizations, you can ask yourself different questions. And these questions will kind of guide what you'll be doing in each part of the paper. So when you're introducing the reader to symbolic interactionism, you can think about these questions. What is symbolic interactionism? How did it begin? What is the main focus of the perspective? So again, a little bit of background, how it came to be, and basically kind of the main ideas, the main focus when using symbolic interactionism. That will give the reader kind of a good taste, a little bit of a foundation on which they'll kind of use throughout the rest of the paper when reading your body and your conclusion. So when looking at the second part, introducing the reader to your social issue. So basically you want to explain what the issue is and how it relates to life today. So this is the issue and this is how it kind of exists in our reality today. And again, so, just like before, you're answering these questions, you want to keep in mind that your reader is not kind of fully up to date with this. So they don't know the issue. You have to explain it to them. They don't know about symbolic interactionism. So you have to fully explain what it is to them. So basically, that's what you want to do. Don't assume that the reader kind of knows your topic. The reader kind of knows the perspective. Take the introduction part of your paper as an opportunity to, again, kind of introduce, to expose the reader to the perspective and to the issue. And then finally, basically, you're going to be talking about the goal of the paper. So what are you trying to accomplish? What should the reader kind of have left in them after they kind of leave the paper? What can they take away from the experience? So, overall, I kind of follow the method of kind of starting kind of general, what is symbolic interactionism, and then specific, your issue, and then more specific, the goal of the paper. What should, the paper be trying to accomplish, and what should the reader expect to find kind of throughout the paper. So the body of the paper is where you perform the analysis of your social issue through that symbolic contractions perspective. So basically, two questions will be kind of centering the analysis. First, what does the issue look like when you view it through the perspective? So if you take in my theory class, I like to use two different metaphors when talking about theories and different perspectives. One is a lens through which you kind of see the world in a new way. So if you use, for example, a Marxist or feminist lens, the world will appear kind of one way based upon the spins you have through Marxism and feminism, as a sociological perspective. So when you look at the world through symbolic contractionism, looking at that same world, it will appear differently because you're looking at it through a different lens. So basically, that ties into the first question. What does the issue look like when you view it through that symbolic contractionist lens? And then the second question is kind of the what I call the tool part metaphor. So it's not only kind of seeing things, but also understanding things in a new way. So that's the second question. How's the issue you selected to study? How is your issue understood when analyzed by the symbolic contractions perspective? So basically, how does it look? Then how is it understood? The lens as a metaphor to see things in a new way, the tool as a metaphor to help you understand things in a new way. So that's kind of the two guiding questions you'll be unpacking in different ways in the body of your paper. Again, where you're performing the major analysis. And finally, the conclusion of the paper, basically two main parts. You want to highlight key ideas of the paper, and the question here: what does the reader need to take away from the experience? So again, you kind of have the goal of the paper, and then to reinforce that goal, to reinforce what you want the reader to take away. And this is where you kind of start off the conclusion part of your paper. Now, you want to avoid trying to summarize everything because we have to give the reader credit for having read and comprehended your paper. So you don't want to make them kind of reread what they just read. You want to avoid that, but you do want to kind of bring to the forefront at the beginning of the conclusion those key ideas that you want to make sure the reader takes away from the experience of reading the paper. And then finally, to kind of wrap up the conclusion, you want to discuss potential directions of future analysis. So, you can't talk about everything in relation to your social issue in symbolic interactionism. So, if you would kind of discuss this further, if you would look into it further, how could you do that? What would you do differently? What didn't you do in your paper that you couldn't do? So basically, you want to kind of show the reader that, this is what I did, but, we can go in different directions in the future as well. So talk about what you didn't fully cover and what I didn't fully cover. We could talk about in future scholarship, or things that I didn't touch on at all that perhaps we could touch on in later scholarship. How can I fill in these gaps that my paper kind of leave open? So that's what we're looking at in terms of the conclusion. Two main parts. Highlight key ideas of the paper. This question is basically, what does the reader need to take away from the experience? And then the second part, proposing kind of future directions of scholarship connected to your paper. What did I fully cover in the paper? How can future scholarship fill in these gaps? So here today, I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the different parts of the paper and how you can think about organizing within the organization, kind of the different parts and the questions that guide those parts. And as we move forward, throughout this third part of the class, I'll be adding to this. So I'll be getting kind of more detail in terms of the body of the paper, specifically the body I concentrate on, because sometimes, that's where we need a little bit more guidance in terms of how I should be writing, what I should be focusing on. The conclusion and the intros, we'll touch on them again, but for the most part, where people will be earning and losing the points will be in the body of the paper. So that's what I want to focus on. So we'll leave that there for today. And, I'll come back to this further and really start to break down, what the paper should be look like in terms of organization, the sub-organization, but also kind of the those questions that kind of are guiding us along the way.